doesn't obtain information or keep information about their locations?
Yes, certain locations. They changed their verbiage, so we asked for something called tombstone data. That's the common terminology, but I did just recently learn about other location data that I didn't know at that time.
But in any event, when you reviewed, did Google respond and give you information?
Yes.
And did you find any information for Susanna or for the defendant in any of those records?
No.
Now, and in your experience, is that unusual?
No. I think there's one case that I've ever looked at where we got an actual good Google read, and it wasn't my case.
But even though you've only done it successfully about one time, you still attempted to get those just to check?
Absolutely.
Now, you pulled social media, you talked about the geofence, you also talked about Gmail records or Google account records. Did you obtain those for the defendant as well?
Yes, I did.
Now, I want to take you to, I guess, when you first got the case, you talked to us about going and searching out there in their O-Block trace and talked about some of the search warrants you've taken out. Were there any real other significant investigatory steps prior to Susanna's body being located?
Yes, they went around the time that I was about to take over the case, but it was becoming a lot more involved. Detectives with the Special Victims Unit went and collected cell phones from everybody that Susanna closely associated with and or was seen or communicated with on the last day of her life.
Apologies, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, yeah.
The cell phones that you're talking about, who were those from?
Kelly, Alyssa, Axel, and Esmeralda. I think it was those four.
Okay. And were those searched and did you review them?
Yes, I did. And they all gave consent for us to search them, which is not a common thing. So that was definitely a good indicator for us.
Did you end up finding anything in any of those phones? You're the lead detective, you reviewed them all. Did you find anything that assisted in locating Susanna?
No, it actually supported all of their statements and what they told us.
Ultimately, did you find any information that any of those people had any involvement in Susanna's disappearance?
No.
Were there any messages between Susanna and her best friends, Esmeralda, Kelly, and Alyssa, about her going anywhere else that night other than home?
No, just them reaching out to her multiple times, asking where she was and that they were scared.
Any information about her, if she's walking home, she changes her mind and decides that she's going to go do something else?
No.
At some point, did the Gwinnett County Police Department obtain dental records?
Yes.
And tell me why that happened.
So that's one of the procedures that is pretty much always done in a missing persons case, especially when they're gone for a specific amount of time. Prior to or after her body was found?
Well, let's talk about both.
Okay.
So you just tell us, the dental records that were found, how many different dental records were obtained?
So Corporal Conway actually obtained x-rays of her dental records, and then after her body was located, Dr. Terry reviewed them, and like she testified for before, the x-rays were old, so she needed a more detailed report. So then I went to a different dentist's office and got an actual documented report where it discusses each tooth and anything that had been done to her teeth.
Now, going to the day that she was found, February 6th, were you at the scene where her body was recovered on that day?
No, I was actually at a different scene.
Okay. In an unrelated case?
Yes.
Okay. So
and heard the call come out.
Now, when were you first alerted that the possibility that the remains might be those of Susanna?
I kind of had a feeling that night because Detective Keshler was communicating with me while I was at the other scene and telling me that they believed it was going to be, sorry, a Hispanic teenage girl, and then the time frame that they estimated that she had been gone, it all lined up. Even though the distance was kind of far, I really was hoping it wasn't her. Even though, like Dr. Terry, I mentioned that to her when Dr. Terry actually came to the scene I was at after she left the scene where Susanna was located and was reviewing the records. I told Dr. Terry, I was like, I don't want it to be her. And, she said, well, then it's somebody else. But I had a feeling that night it was going to be her. And then the next morning when they went back out there, they said that they located hair that was two-toned, the black and the blonde. Sorry. Whew. I really didn't want it to be her. And that it was curly, and I knew that was consistent with Susanna's hair. And they had also located fingernails with black nail polish on it. And they sent me some pictures of it, and it was chipped black nail polish. And I knew from reviewing social media posts that Alyssa and Kelly made the day that she was killed, that she had chipped black nail polish.
Ultimately, once you obtained those dental records, the updated dental records, did you provide those to Dr. Terry?
Yes.
Okay. As the lead detective, have you reviewed everyone's reports in this case?
Yes.
Did you review the medical examiner's report and all of the personnel from CSI and the medical examiner's office that were out there?
Yes.
Are you aware of any clothing ever being found with or near Susanna's body where it was located?
No.
Have you ever, in your experience as a police officer or a detective, have you ever heard of any case involving the West Police Department where a teenager's naked body was found in the woods and it was not a homicide?
Objection, Your Honor. That's not relevant. What may or may not have happened in another case.
Your Honor, I believe that based on the circumstances of this case, the defense in this case, the conclusions that the defense is attempting to obtain, that this is happenstance or it's an accident. I think Detective Carter's expert opinion on her experience as a police officer is relevant in this context.
I do too. I'm going to overrule the objection.
No, I have not.
Have you ever heard of finding anybody who overdosed naked in the woods?
No.
At some point, let me ask you, once you had the confirmation from Dr. Terry, what did you do next in the investigation at that point? Once you knew it was her, what steps did you take in order to try and figure out what had happened?
Well, next I made contact with her family and gave the notification. But when they did the grid search out there, I was advised that they located the firearm that had been reported stolen hours after she was killed. I reviewed that report and began looking into Miles Bryant, who reported the gun stolen. I learned that he was an officer with Doraville Police Department. It definitely concerned me pretty much immediately. I then reviewed the body cam from when the gun was taken.
Specifically, that body camera footage you're talking about, was that the body camera footage of Officer Merkley who took the stolen gun report?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you, in Gwinnett County, is it uncommon for somebody to have their gun stolen from their vehicle?
No.
And in particular, a gun stolen from the same place in the same night that Susanna went missing. What did you think at that point when you had that information?
It was 1,000% related. I reviewed other reports that were taken that night in that area. Because it was reported as an entering auto, there's never only one entering auto. There may not be other reports, like where they call police, but there's usually some other evidence that there was other activities that were taken.
What do you mean by that, when there's not usually just one?
Someone doesn't come into a complex that's trying to break into cars and only break into one car. I've never seen that.
What do you normally see?
Multiple reports of people's vehicles being broken into.
Okay. In this particular instance, once you found the entering auto report that the defendant made, did you look to see if any other entering auto reports or any other evidence of any other car break-ins had occurred that night?
Yes.
Did you find any?
No.
And when you reviewed the body camera footage, and we watched it here, so we don't need to watch it again, but there was the statement the defendant made about not wanting to have a detective assigned to his case. Did you find that statement unusual?
Very.
And explain to us why.
As an officer, you know that guns just being out on the street is extremely dangerous, especially in the hands of someone who's not registered to it, or juveniles, or other gang members, because they know that their names aren't going to be tied to it. And not knowing who is in possession of a stolen firearm, it's dangerous, and even an officer with not a ton of experience should know that.
And so as you saw the report, though, and you watched the body camera video, at that point, did you immediately decide that the defendant was a person of interest, or were there other things that you found as well that led you to that belief?
It definitely piqued my interest a lot more. I then looked at other reports from his. I looked up his name to see if we could if there were other reports, and that's when I located the incident with Alicia Bates in Snellville.
We've heard from Ms. Bates. You found that. At that point, was it at that point you reached out to Ms. Bates, or was it sometime later?
It was sometime later.
Okay. Did you ever, as you were investigating, did you obtain the defendant's cellular phone records?
Yes.
And did the police department analyze those records at that time?
Yes.
What did you find?
That his phone was in the wood line a couple hours after Susanna was last seen on camera, in the wood line where her body was located.
All right, and specifically, as we're talking about it here, I'm going to put up a slide from State's Exhibit number 3 here. Which phone was it of his that you initially saw the phone records for?
It was his work phone.
Okay.
We did get a search warrant for his personal phone, but at the time when we were getting the search warrant, it was ported through Verizon, but through Xfinity's phone plan. So we didn't have knowledge that, and he had previously changed providers in between there. So we had to write again for T-Mobile.
All right. So initially you sent search warrants for the phone records for his work phone and his personal phone.
Correct.
However, the personal phone number got sent to the wrong company.
Correct.
Okay. So then you obtained, but when did that happen? Was that later?
Yes.
Okay. So on his work phone, I'm going to show you here, State's Exhibit 3. Is this a representation of what you observed when you looked at his cellular phone records for his work phone?
Yes.
All right. And describe to the jury, when you saw this, what piqued your interest about it?
It wasn't just a coincidence. There was too many factors in play at that point.
All right. So the distance, do you know how far it is to drive from the defendant's apartment and where Susanna went missing to where her body was located out on Highway 316?
I don't know the exact number. I know it's over 20 miles.
Okay. And the times here, when you had your timeline created, what was the last time that you were able to positively identify Susanna's location?
10:29 p.m.
So how long after that was the defendant's defendant in the area immediately surrounding Susanna's body. And you can look at it
Surrounding her body, okay.
based on this
yeah.
screen.
1:39 p.m. a.m., I apologize, on the 27th.
So we're looking at approximately 3 hours and 10 minutes or so later?
Yes.
Okay. At some point, did you end up getting his personal phone records?
I did.
Okay, and when you reviewed those, and again, I'll put this up here, finding here that 12:52 and 12:58 a.m., how long after Susanna's crash alert at 10:29 was this?
About like an hour and 20-ish minutes.
Let's see.
10:29 to
That's
1.
2 hours and 20 minutes?
Yeah, there we go.
Is that okay? So less than 2.5 hours later, after Susanna's phone sent the crash alert, the defendant's phone were in the woods?
Yes.
Okay. At that point, what did you, in terms of the investigative options that you had, what did you decide to do?
I obtained this after,
Okay.
further after.
So you found, how much later was it that you got his personal phone records?
Probably like a month after he was arrested.
Okay. So all you had to go on at the time was his work phone number. Well, once you saw those locations that we looked at a moment ago, what did you decide to do?
I decided that I definitely had enough at that time to detain him and get an interview with him, but we wanted to do it consensually. But at that point, with what I had after discussing it with the district attorney's office, you specifically, we decided that we didn't need to make a charge, and we ended up charging him with the concealing the death of another. Especially given his job at that time, I didn't want to leave anybody in that role that could potentially be involved in a murder of a 16-year-old.
As a police officer?
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about the defendant's phone records in general. We were looking at, and Investigator Wilbanks put this presentation together. There was some calls that were the Investigator Wilbanks mapped, and I want to ask you about a few of those here. And we'll start here with just this one. And what I'm specifically looking at here, and I can't really zoom in on this, but the portion over here where it's got the call detail records, can you see that?
Yes.
So this one, as Investigator Wilbanks put up here, is 9:15 p.m. The number that the defendant called at that time, did you research, and for the record, it's 770-381-9777. Did you know what that number, or did you research what that number was?
Yes.
What was it?
It's a barbecue restaurant in Lilburn.
Okay. And so that's at 9:15, 9:16. That's what the call is from the defendant.
Yes, and he actually called it 4 times between 9:15 and 9:40.
Okay. The next ones